Welcome back to the Books Brothers podcast, the podcast where longtime friends spread across the country reconnect through the pages of a good book. Each episode, we dive into what we are reading, sharing our thoughts and perspectives, all while enjoying a few good laughs along the way. Whether you're a big reader or a small reader, or just enjoy listening in on our discussion, join in as we explore insightful topics and narratives while connecting each week. I'm Rob.
I'm Matt.
I'm Fles.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Garrett.
To kick off Season 6, we are reading The Gates of Fire, an epic novel of the Battle of Thermopylae by Steven Pressfield. While we have primarily read nonfiction self-help books, we wanted to flip the script and dive into a historical fiction book to keep things fresh. We hope you join in on our journey. Please do forgive us with this one, as we may butcher the names of these characters and places during our discussion. In the first book of Gates of Fire, titled Xerxes, the narrative is set against the backdrop of the ancient Persian Empire during the lead up to the pivotal Battle of Thermopylae. The story is primarily told through the eyes of a young Spartan warrior named Xerxes, who serves as the narrator. Here are several key events and themes that set the stage for the narrative. So Xerxes' family tragedy. The story begins with Xerxes recounting the brutal attack on his hometown by the allied Argives. This traumatic event leads to the death of his family, which deeply impacts him and motivates his desire to fight. This loss shapes his identity and his journey. Survival and capture. After witnessing the destruction, Xerxes survives and is eventually captured by the Spartans. His narrative explores his feelings of guilt and survival as he grapples with the weight of his family's death and his role in the war. Introduction to Spartan culture. Through Xerxes' eyes, readers are introduced to Spartan society and its values, including discipline, loyalty, and the warrior ethos. The rigorous training and lifestyle of the Spartans are vividly described, emphasizing their preparation for battle. Finally, training and brotherhood. The bond between warriors is explored through Xerxes' interaction with other characters such as Xerxes and Diamanche. Xerxes, his parent's slave, exemplifies loyalty and strength, while Diamanche, his older cousin, challenges traditional gender roles with her skills as a warrior. Their camaraderie highlights the importance of brotherhood in Spartan culture, preparing them for the upcoming conflict. So, I wanted to touch base because I thought that this part of the book one was really interesting on the tripod character. I forget his actual Spartan name, but he was referred to as Tripod, and how his story connects to Xerxes' introduction to Spartan culture. This part of the book is particularly fascinating as it underscores the intense and often fatal nature of Spartan training. Tripod, a fierce 12-year-old, was engaged in the Agoge training, facing brutal challenges that led to his demise. He could have chosen to withdraw. Basically, he was getting beaten on the back, and I guess he was holding a pole, and if you let go of the pole, you would basically be bowing out, but he was maybe too prideful to bow out, so he could have chosen to withdraw, but yet his death exemplifies the immense pressure to excel and the expectation to sacrifice everything for honor. It also raises questions about pride, as Tripod ultimately gained nothing, and his life could have been spent more meaningfully in battle. So what did you guys think about that part of the chapter?
I liked it. I think it gives a really good image of the culture and the warriors that the Spartans are trying to create. I also think it's really stupid that Tripod didn't let go. He essentially killed himself by being whipped too much. But one of the things that stuck with me the most in this book is from that scene. And it was after the fact, after Tripod had died, that I think it was the main character and one of the leaders of the army. I forget who it was exactly, but they were essentially saying, should he have done this or not? And one of the leaders said something like, he knew that his body was not his own. His body belongs to Sparta, essentially.
Like page 34, 35.
Yeah. And yeah, he just knew that his body was for something greater than just himself. And I thought that was really cool. And my thought was, what if our culture was like that today? How would we be different? How would our lives look? How would our culture look if everyone is fighting for something better, bigger than themselves?
Matt, so what you were kind of talking about, like, does kamikaze kind of fit within that dying for something greater good? Like,
Yeah, I would think so. Kamikazes are soldiers obeying orders. They're not just thinking of themselves.
yeah,
They're giving up their lives while I don't know. It depends on the circumstances, I think, but
no, for sure. But I liked what you were saying though, because one of my questions after this was actually like, have you ever felt like you've sacrificed yourself for an unnecessary cause? Because in the story, they were basically like, man, that was kind of a waste, because we could have used, like, that could have been a body, whether how strong, if it's a Spartan body, it's going to be a body that has discipline and all that stuff. So it's going to be one of great substance, but it's almost like, man, you kind of became too prideful there that now we have one less good body.
I think the main from the page 34 and 35, Deinekes is talking to Alexandros and asking him a set of questions after this. And one of the last questions he asks is, what was their intention? I think Alexandros says to harden his mind against pain. I think that kind of is good. It gives me like David Goggins vibes.
Yeah.
Like hardening your mind against pain. Kind of gives you like Navy SEAL vibes in a way.
So along with what Matt was saying, this death really gives a good introduction into Spartan culture. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking that all the older warriors are going to be approving this and stamping on this death. But then the fact that Deinekes then like brings Alexandros aside and says like, hey, no, this is like a waste. I think, yeah, it's like, oh, okay, there's, what's the lesson in this? And, as you relate it to your question there, Rob, so have you ever felt like you've sacrificed yourself for an unnecessary cause? I feel like the thing that we probably all are guilty of is our work. So how often is it that we overwork ourselves, overstress ourselves out, and then that affects our home life, our family life, and, in the story here, he's trying to say like, what's our, as Adam says, like, what's the intention? What's the goal? And, similarly, it's like, how often do we essentially push ourselves to the brink at work that we then come home and we can't be a good father, be a good husband, and those kind of things. And I've definitely been through that. I've definitely dealt with stressful situations at work where I've brought it home and not been able to kind of compartmentalize that.
We all must have enjoyed this same section because this is where I had the most things underlined. Specifically, the idea of having a mentor who is not your parent, or in this specific example, a father. Obviously, very important to have a father figure, but mentorship, people who are in different generations of life than you, but aren't blood related to you, can speak into your life in ways that sometimes your parents just can't. And it's extremely valuable. I've been fortunate to have mentors and have mentors currently that I need, I can call on. And having someone who's 20, 30 years older, being able to speak in to my situation with years of experience, it's invaluable. And it doesn't surprise me how renowned the Spartans were in terms of their fighting and honor and warrior, and how they trained them up when I read that part about having mentors outside of blood relatives like your father.
Yeah, Adam, I thought what you just shared though about like work, I feel like there's hills. Is it hills that you die on or whatever? Yeah. Like, I feel like there's certain aspects, like not even just work itself, just small micro things at work that it's like, I feel very passionately about that we should be measuring a metric this way and not the way that we're currently doing it. It stirs up so much emotion in my head where it's just like, this is such a small part of my work but yet my life, but yet like it's impacting my home life or how I come to work essentially or whatever, my disposition towards other things where it's like, man, I'm really dying on this unnecessary cause. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's so small. And I think it just goes to like the passion. And I think a lot of these Spartans have the passion of the honor, the discipline, the wanting to like do the work. And sometimes it takes them overboard. And I think we get to see those narratives kind of play out here as well. But any other things to add on that one? I thought that was a key part of the book that I enjoyed in the first book. And it sounds like you guys did too, which is great.
So I didn't know how deep we would be able to get with this book. And I'm about to go pretty deep. So I'm answering my own question here. We're able to talk about, the question is on the negative side, the unnecessary cause was your question. In modern day, in American society, what are necessary causes to sacrifice and to die for? And not rhetorical. I feel probably part of the reason that there's so much depression and aimlessness and time wasted on social media, like we talked about with the anxious generation, has to do with purposelessness, because we don't identify things that are worth fighting for, figuratively or literally. So other than being a present father or being a good husband, what are things that are worth sacrificing for?
Causes like suicide prevention or like maybe, but even that, it's like you could still go too far with good causes, And is it worth dying for or sacrificing for? I don't know. It's tough.
Maybe that's like the overarching category of like mental wellness, though, where that there is more value in sacrificing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to like the comfort crisis, right? I think we have kind of everything that we need in the States for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I think of are my faith and my value system that then comes from that. So with that faith system being a professing Christian, I think that justice is a part of that. Treating people being treated fairly, serving those who are less fortunate. I think of my family. I think of my wife. I think of my daughter. I think of friends. I feel like that's one that I see myself sacrificing time, energy with is, friends and who are dealing with things.
That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say in almost those same words.
What about you, Garrett?
So macro level, what are things so Sparta, actually, I don't know this. Was Sparta, I'm confused. Is Sparta its own country?
So Sparta is a part of like Greek culture. So it's a Greek country. And then they're fighting against Persia, that's the overarching. And so, with Persia, essentially this is my understanding. So correct me if you're wrong. So my understanding is a lot of the political thoughts that we have are more birthed out of Greek and Roman culture as opposed to Persian culture. And so that's why, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why traditionally we like the Battle of Sparta, or we like the Battle of Thermopylae, the movie 300, because those are the values that got passed down to us. Democracy, fairness, treating folks equally. Yeah, that's my understanding. And so a lot of it was freedom. Freedom to live your way, to not be under an oppressive ruler who also was your god. Xerxes was the god of the Persians, and that's how they were to view him.
Yeah. And then aren't they like city-states? Like Sparta,
it's a city
and Athens
state
and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I could also be wrong on this, but I think so. Sparta is where the core of what's happening with the Spartans. That's where they are, which is a part of Lacedaemon, from what I understand. So like Sparta is like a town within Lacedaemon.
Mm.
But yeah, you're right, Adam. This whole battle of Thermopylae, what the Spartans did, saved the entire Western civilization from anarchy, essentially. Tyrants, yeah. And preserved democracy and what we can experience today. Just crazy. It's weird to think what would happen if the Spartans were not there and didn't significantly stop the Persians. What would the world look like?
I just have had a lot of, the last several years, I think I reflect on that, like, purpose, because what we've talked about previously, like you said, the comfort crisis, we kind of have everything that we need. And if you don't like a job, you can just go get a different job. Whereas a lot of these folks, like, they got their land, like, that's what they're going to eat off of. Like, you got to survive, or you have this country, your body is not your own. It is Spartan. And I can't identify with that. And because we live in an individualistic society, which there's pros to that, but I can't really resonate with something where I'm like, where is there a united front across our entire country that we can rally behind? A lot of times the latest reference was 9/11. That was the last time that there was like unity, where it was like, okay, put away all your political opinions, what side you're on. We're all one America, or whatever. But in a day in, day out basis, I have struggled with that previously. And I'm not like, I haven't arrived or anything, but during the pandemic, my wife's going into the hospital and seemingly saving people's lives. And I would get home and I'm like, oh, I worked on a battery today for a window blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I doing? Or even now, it's like, oh, I make water bottles, See, it's funny,
Yeah.
And if I'm just telling you how, like,
yeah.
And so sometimes guys, like,
Perspective.
yeah, like, even talking like Matt or Stalen, I think some of the things you've shared, it's like your wives stay at home. So, man, I feel a little bit more pressure. I feel a little bit more stress because I gotta succeed at my job. And I'm like, man, if I lose my job, I could be a stay-at-home dad. I'll be fine. And
sounds nice.
What I'm saying is, there doesn't seem to be any mandatory causes that I need to take up and align with other people, so it can feel aimless at times. And there's the faith component, yes, which is why I'm doing okay. Otherwise, I'd probably be really screwed up. I'm not exaggerating. Having like the Lord in my life. So I just think about that. I'm like reading this and I'm like, dude, I cannot resonate with like being whipped and my body is for the United States of America, whatever its cause is. I'm like, shoot, I want to live as long as possible because I want to see my kids grow up and I want to have grandkids. Like, I'm very me focused. Does that, am I making sense?
No, Garrett. So I think that we have a very comfortable society where we have an excess of freedoms, and this is a very good thing, but we haven't really had to worry about, and I know this is kind of veering on the political side. It doesn't seem to me, and everyone's experience is different, that we have to worry about losing kind of major freedoms in our country. And I think the whole concept too of just general patriotism has gone down. And honestly, the term patriotism has become more associated with one political party. And again, not to be political about things, but we're kind of in this like era. It seems like with our country where liking and really supporting the country is not very big, not a very popular thing.
So you're saying that because supporting the country, you're not actually, it feels more political than actually being like USA, like the Olympics, like we are with the Olympics.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I just think the term patriotism in particular,
really united with the Olympics.
Yeah, for sure. But like the term patriotism has become more a Republican associated word. And I think that people who have American flags up on their house, again, in general, it tends to be more people who are Republicans. And again, I'm not trying to be intentionally political, but basically to say that there is this view that extreme support for the country is almost politicized. And when people see that, they're like, oh, but that's supporting old values, not new values. And it's kind of this weird murky water.
I wonder if our country would change if we had something similar happen in this book, to where, let's say, essentially all of Europe and Asia is under one emperor, and they've taken over that entire part of the world, and they come to America and they're like, hey, you guys better bow down, essentially, or we are going to take over your entire country and make you all our slaves.
Be screwed. Have you seen Gen Z? Bunch of pansies.
We just read about it, Fles. It's not their fault. It's ours.
I wonder if that would be more of a rallying thing like it is for Sparta, you know?
I mean, but isn't that how life always is? Like big change, like, you know, whenever you have a bad situation happen, that usually causes big change. You know, people talk about, oh, I went to the doctor and got diagnosed with this, and so that's why I made all these changes.
I just want everyone to be able to say, this is America.
I gotta say, I still do kick doors open that way sometimes. So
it's awesome.
Hey everyone, it's Matt. We're going to take a quick break from our discussion. We thought it would be fun to have some of us recommend other books that we have already read and likely will not discuss on this podcast. These books will be ones that are memorable and impactful to the person recommending it, and we would love for others to read them too. If you do read one of our recommended books, let us know. Send us a message because we would love to talk about it with you and to know that you at least gave the book a try. So for me, as most of you know, I'm big into fantasy books. My recommendation is the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. Book 1 of Mistborn is a masterful blend of fantasy and intrigue that really captured my imagination from the start. The story is set in a world where ash falls from the sky and mist dominates the night, which creates an atmosphere that's really haunting and captivating. The magic system, which is based on various metals and their abilities, is unique and complex and incredibly well thought out. What makes this book really intriguing is discovering the magic system and the world together with the characters. Sanderson makes you feel like you're learning everything as if you are in the story with the other characters. There's action, humor, mystery, politics, love, all the good things. Sanderson's ability to create relatable characters in a world so different from ours makes it easy to get lost in the narrative. There's a reason Sanderson is one of the best and most popular fantasy writers of our day, and the reason really comes out in this trilogy. So if you read and like Mistborn, there's even more to this world. There's a sequel series set in the future and a new cast of characters. Not only that, this world of Mistborn is part of a massive storyline called the Cosmere. There are many other books, novels, and a whole separate series that are all part of the Cosmere. And they're each unique but tie into this massive world that Sanderson has created. Mistborn can be read and enjoyed by itself, but if you want to go deeper with the other books, you'll have plenty of pages to keep you entertained.
All right, guys. So after suffering severe injuries from a brutal punishment for stealing food, Xerxes has a profound revelation while escaping from his captors. As he runs away, he encounters, I believe, an archer, maybe a god, who demonstrates the skill and precision of archery. This encounter inspires Xerxes to reflect on his own limitations compared to the stronger warriors around him. He realizes that brute strength is not his path and discovers his latent talent for archery. This revelation becomes pivotal, allowing him to see that he can contribute to the Spartan cause in a meaningful way without conforming to the traditional image of a warrior. Archery offers him a sense of purpose and helps him carve out his own identity within Spartan culture. At least we understand that to be maybe the path that it's heading in book 1, but I know he gets more physical in book 2. So can you guys share a personal revelation you've had about your own skills, particularly how you've turned maybe a weakness like Xerxes's or a limitation into a strength? Fles, I know you have your thumbs.
We'll include a picture in the show notes.
Really good at pushing down on things. I don't know what that's helpful for, but no, actually I was going to touch on that. So I think for me, I'm pretty introverted. I like to read podcasts. Most of my hobbies are very solitary, like lifting, hiking, trail runs, reading, podcasts, all that. But I'm also in sales. And so it's kind of interesting. You would think that like a good sales rep would be this like super extroverted, outgoing, like person like that. That's kind of what I think most people think of when they think of a sales rep. But I think it's an advantage. I've turned my introverted thing, you could see that as a weakness being a sales rep. When in reality, I'm just much better at active listening than other people are. So like if some like extroverts having a conversation with somebody, they may interrupt the conversation and say something and like overtake the conversation, whereas I stay back more and listen more, can come up with like a better solution usually. And so I think I've turned like my introversion into an advantage with my job.
Yeah, I think I'm in sales as well. And Adam, as you say, that is really interesting because before I got into sales, I thought I was going to have to become more pushy. And as I've gotten in this role, I've realized, no, there needs to be people who are not pushy. There needs to be, there needs to be a diversity of different types of people. And with what you say, a lot of times the person who's loudest in the room or jumps in a conversation might have some success, but that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I can't think of anything personally, to be honest.
You have no weaknesses?
No weaknesses. At least none that I've turned into a strength.
Oh, yeah. They're
all still weak.
I can share again. You guys have probably heard this story from me either before this or as we've talked through stuff over the last couple of years. When I was a sophomore in high school, I broke a bone in my back. And at this point, I was very involved in soccer and club soccer, played soccer almost the whole year round, and pretty competitive team and such. And so I had this broken bone in my back that I had to wear like a corset thing for like 12 weeks. Adam, do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah. Didn't you get shingles? You got shingles?
Yeah, I got shingles. And it was just I was super depressed. It was really kind of a bummer of time in life, but there's also a lot of growth that came from it. And I remember it's a really kind of a cool story too of what my parents did, and especially my dad. So at this point, I was, sports were kind of my main way I defined myself and identified myself. But I also I played guitar at this point already. I'd been playing the guitar since I was in like 4th grade. I remember this is a period where I started playing a lot more of the guitar. And I remember my dad bought a recording board, like a recording software and like a mixer. So I could start like recording and, doing that kind of thing with music. And, it was something that here I had this time where I really couldn't do something that gave me a lot of identity and feelings of worth, but had this other opportunity to let this other part of me flourish and ultimately become a more well-rounded person. And I think especially, so at you're 15, 16, when you're a sophomore in high school. And I think that was probably pretty formative for me in helping me see that, my identity is not in one thing, and really see that I could learn new skills and become good at something.
And then Sack Lunch just began.
And Sack Lunch, yeah. One of the best pop punk bands of the era.
Do they know about Sack Lunch? Do these guys know about Sack Lunch?
I don't know if they do.
Oh, man. Do you have any songs that you can play for us sometime?
Yeah, off the call, though.
Oh, okay. Shoot.
I was in a band basically from when I was a freshman through like high school through freshman college. So.
And it was called Sack Lunch?
We were called Sack Lunch.
Wow. So many other better names. Garrett, did you have anything on this one?
I think for me, my brand, if you will, historically has been I want to be average, or I want to know a little about a lot of things, or I want to be decent at a lot of things, but I've never historically focused on one or two singular things to be excellent at it. And the job I'm currently in has, to summarize, really honed in and forced me, like my job is to become an expert in one thing. That was an adjustment for me. And a year in, I've really started to see a lot of the value in that and seeing the positive aspects about, hey, I may not know everything, but I can know one or two things really, really well and hone those skills and make those strengths to the best of my ability and set myself apart, whether it's career-wise, whatever. I also think, I don't know why, but one of the first things I thought of was Rudy, the movie Rudy, where, the character in this book is like, shoot, now I can't hold a sword. But yet he's like, man, I can do something else. I can learn a different skill and do archery. And have you all have ever heard of strengths finders?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. I got mine right here.
There you go. And you learn your strength. Yeah. So I always remember the intro to that book. The guy calls out Rudy and basically ridicules him. Like the thought, not him personally, but the thought of the story, where basically he spent his whole life trying to play for Notre Dame, and he played 2 plays. He did all that work. No, seriously, he's like, playing football was not this guy's strength, but we celebrate a story like that and make a movie about it because against all odds, he played 2 plays. And just this idea of like hone in on what you're good at and do those with excellence. And it's okay to cast aside the things you may not be more naturally gifted at. So I don't have an exact example, but I think of Rudy and how I'm like, let's not focus on the things I'm bad at. Now, like, I'm not talking about character things like being kinder or gentler. Those are things, being less angry, less competitive when it comes to parenting or sports, things that don't ultimately matter. But really, like, what are my strengths? And let's hone in on those rather than like, oh, I'm not really good at, like, I've never been super strong at marketing. It's like, it's okay. We have a marketing department. I don't need to be a marketing genius. I can focus on what I'm good at in my role at my job and work with the marketing team who is good at that. That's what I really think of.
Well, I mean, to that point though, it's like, I know, Flez, you might laugh, but it's like, what's one way to work on your patience? For me, lately, it's fishing. Straight up. I've been preparing, getting my rods and reels all straight. I go out there all excited, and what do? I throw it out there and it gets all tangled up, and it's like, oh shit. I gotta spend 30 minutes getting this thing, and I'm about 8 hours in and I still haven't pulled a fish up, So it's like, that's one way that I'm going to work on my patience is I'm going to continue to put myself in these positions that are going to test my patience, my anger, whatever. And the less patient that I get, the more angry I get, the less likely I'm going to pull in a fish.
And again, that's why I made that caveat. I'm not talking about character things.
No, I know.
I'm talking about life. Like in the, how do you say his name? How do you say his name? Siones. It's like, yeah, he should not. He literally, more or less got crucified. That was brutal.
Yeah.
Like they drove literal nails through his hands. Absolutely unbelievable. It's like, yeah, your strength is not going to be gripping a sword fighting. And so instead of spending all your life trying to grip a sword, focus on archery, right? Like Rudy, like just go work in the coal mines with your dad or whatever. Maybe that's Zoolander.
Zoolander?
Maybe I'm getting my character arcs confused.
I got the black lung, Pop.
If that's how Rudy would have ended, though, it would have been not that interesting of a movie, Garrett.
That's the point. It wouldn't have been a movie because who cares about a guy who focuses on his strengths? This guy, he defied all odds. And then he went on to play the second most popular Hobbit.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Sam was more popular than Frodo, though. Come on.
All right. So I think there's a lot of components of like legacy, honor, within, the Sparta culture. But lately I have been reflecting on the significance of honor and legacy in my own life and how they influence my actions. And in the first book, we see how these core ideals impact characters like Xerxes and Tripod. So what do honor and legacy mean to you? How do they influence your actions? And I can start if you want, because I do have an answer prepared. Garrett, I know I kind of shared with you, I'm kind of on this trying to get deeper into healing journey and what that means in my life. So my wife got me a book, Be Healed. And it basically just walks you through about try to get to the root of why you might be living the way that you are based on like certain criteria, right? So like, are they lies that you've been fed, or how have you been raised, blah, 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 right? Through reading that book, it has been a good revelation for me to look at what are areas of my life that I need healed. How do I look at that, and what does that look like moving forward, right? So if you take how you were raised, or have you guys seen those videos of the glasses where it's like it has a pink liquid here and it's like these are your grandparents, and then it has another glass where like these are your parents, and then it's like here's you, and then here's your offspring. So it's like your grandparents pour the trauma to their parents and it stays the same color, and then your parents pour it to you, and like you get their color, and it's like not changing. So it's like, are you going to only pass that on to the next generation, or are you going to fill that with water and essentially try and give them not your traumas that were given you passed on, right? So I've been thinking about that as part of like my healing journey, right? So it's like, what are things that my parents did really well, and what are some things that they didn't do really well that I somewhat inherited, right? Through the parenting styles or whatever. And so like, what does that look like in terms of rectifying healing within my own heart and life, and how that has made me as a person? And then how do I work to kind of rewrite the script so that I can make sure like, oh man, those are definitely not the things that I want to pass on to my generation, right? And in order to do that, I have to be one, like aware of that, and two, seek healing to try and not pass that on to the next generation. And so I've been doing a lot of that work internally of just one, recognizing it, and then trying to like consciously focus and work through those things. And I guess the honor and the legacy component pre having children make me especially want to do that work now, so that I can be ready for when I do have children, that I'm not figuring it all out through wounding them in the process. I know I'm going to wound them in the process because I'm human and I'm not going to have it all figured out. But if I can do that less, that would be good.
That's really good, Rob. What's prompted you to kind of start that route, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. I mean, basically, Marianne got me the book, and it's done wonders for her in her life. And it's been sitting on the shelf, and we've been burning through books. And that's where, we started this next chapter in our life, just with the home and hopefully preparing for kids soon. And it just was a call to really, hey, let's read something that I can, really have a personal journey and walk through and be able to share and grow with her in those areas as well. And it's been really good so far. We had some really good conversations about the book and my take on it over the weekend, which was really healing for both of us, just to know that we both seek out this type of work and we're not suppressing things that we can't call a spade and say like, oh yeah, I got this from this experience, or, oh, this relationship contributed to that, or whatever, like be aware of why we are the way we are and try and work through that to change the script.
That's good.
That's great.
There was a quote that I really liked that kind of reminded me of this. It was on page 36. And it said, "The helmet and the breastplate are for his own sake, but his shield is for the safety of the whole line." So that made me think of the legacy component where it's like you can focus, be prideful and focus on yourself, which is like the helmet and the breastplate. But doing the work for others through doing your personal work is like what I was saying is, how do I build my shield through the healing process or whatever so that I can protect the front line, that I can protect the brothers, the people that I love behind me, you know? Because if we never do that work, if we never bolster ourselves, people are going to come after us, right? Like if we never attack the demons of whatever, we're going to be susceptible until we address those things.
Do you remember the name of the shield?
Hell no. I think it started with an A.
Hoplon. This the round 3-foot shield that weighs like 60 pounds.
Yeah, just don't leave it laying up or down, man. Got to pee in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think honor is extremely important for me, Rob. I strive to be a good person with integrity, someone who does things well in all areas of my life. And I think that stems from the way I was brought up, our culture, my family, and family values, and faith. I think it's important to have good honor, just trying to do whatever I'm doing to the best of my ability. And then from that, I think hopefully my legacy will be that I pass that along to my kids so that they are good people as well, with integrity, truthful, full of mercy and grace, and doing the right thing, showing love to everyone, all those things. I think I want that to be my legacy.
Love it. I will say something. So I think for me, honor means keeping your promises, doing what you say you're going to do, and then just being honest, telling the truth. I think those two things are what I think of when I think of honor, being an honorable man. I think legacy, obviously I don't have kids, or it's not really in the future right now, but for me, legacy is like what's going to be on my tombstone. Is it going to be worked hard at his job, or is it going to be was just like a good man, good friend, you know, good uncle, good godfather? People thought that he was an honorable man. That's what the legacy I want. So yeah, they kind of go hand in hand, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Books Brothers podcast. Join us next week as we discuss Book 2, Alexandros, in the Gates of Fire. If you haven't yet, grab the book, The Gates of Fire by Steven Pressfield, so you can better follow along with us. If you've enjoyed listening or benefited from our conversation, please subscribe, give us a review, and share with a friend that you want to connect deeper with. Lastly, we would love to hear your thoughts. You can reach us by email at connect@booksbrotherspodcast.com or on Instagram @booksbrotherspodcast. Until next week, read, reflect, and connect.